I just remember thinking, I feel like I'm in the Matrix. I feel like we're living in a perception, like I'm looking at, or someone else at home is looking into their phone the next day thinking, I wish I was at that party, it looks so good. But in reality, the people that were there, they were miserable and they
didn't
didn't
want
want
to
to
be
be
there.
there.
Yeah. Fuck it. Jade, you've given me goosebumps talking about that shit. Yeah. Mikey's sat behind saying the same thing. Like, there's so many people that need to hear what you've just said. Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you. Welcome back to another episode of the Prime Life Project podcast. I'm your host, Daniel James, and today, it's been a bit of drama already. Like, you might see the video version of this. People are watching this on YouTube. It's slightly different to normal. So Chrissy, Mikey's girlfriend, is an absolute genius, and she's managed to save the podcast. So my guest today was having some technical difficulties, but we've managed to sort it out. And what it's actually done is it's enabled us to connect before we start this podcast. So this episode is going to be absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to share it with you. So my guest today is Jade English, who was a semi-finalist. She was a semi-finalist on the BBC's Apprentice, and she's now turned into a holistic happiness hunter. Jade's on a mission to bring the benefits of holistic practices to the masses, showing us that you don't have to be bohemian. Sorry, you don't have to live the bohemian lifestyle to embrace your spiritual side. She's been quoted as saying, "I want to shine a light on what can make people feel good inside and out and empower them to make informed decisions on alternative therapies." Jade, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a bit of a drama, but I feel like we've bonded, and I think this is going to be a good one.
Like you said, like, we've now been through something. It's brought us a little bit closer. Like, there's not a problem at all. We're in a safe space. It's okay. We're all good. So, Jade, I'm really looking forward to talking to you, because I know a lot of my female listeners are going to be able to relate to yourself and your story. But you've come out the other end. So before we go into the Apprentice and that sort of stuff, can you just take me back to the beginning and just sort of share what your life was like growing up and your sort of hunger for reaching the top? Like, where did that actually sort of come from?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's so weird when you think about your life as a story like that, isn't it? But so I grew up in Cheshire, just outside of Manchester. I lived with my mum predominantly, and I saw my dad on and off. And my dad sort of got his own business in financial advising. My mum worked in IT and stuff. So I've got quite a disjointed family, if I'm honest with you. So I've got 4 siblings, but all halves through different parents. I know. So I don't know if that's the same with you.
No, it's not, but just the way that you said it, I was just like, I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's like, this is my half this, my half that, and it's, gets confusing.
Yeah, it does get confusing. Whenever I say to anyone, oh, well, that's my sister and that's my brother, but really they're my half, but I class them as my full, and I don't actually have my mum or my dad's surname, bizarrely, and that's a fun fact I always like to pull out at a party, but there you go.
So whose surname do you have then?
So it's really weird. So my mum got married when she was 18 to a guy called Martin English, and she had a baby with him, my sister, Rebecca English, and then after they'd been together for years and stuff, and then they broke up, unfortunately, but then my mum and my dad got with each other, and my dad's called Simon Booth and my mum's called Carol English at this point, but they weren't married, but they were together for 13 years. And my mum was like, look, me and Rebecca are called Rebecca English and Carol English. So until we get married, Jade is going to be Jade English, because otherwise they'll have different names. And I think there was a bit of a rocky point, I think, when my mum was pregnant with me. So anyway, long story short, so I'm Jade English, my dad's Simon Booth. They never ended up getting married, so I kept English. But then they broke up and they both remarried different people. So my mum took someone else's surname, Griffiths. So now I'm an English, and my sister got married, so I'm the only English in my family. It's
that is
so weird.
Absolutely bizarre.
So weird, isn't it? I know, but I'm quite glad, because I think English is better than Booth.
It's a very good business. It's a good business name. Jade English is a very strong business name.
Thank you. Yes, there you go. So every cloud has its silver lining.
Whereabouts in Cheshire did you live? Because I used to work at a personal training company in Alderley Edge, so I kind of know that.
Really?
Yeah, so I kind of know that neck of the woods.
No way. Yeah, so kind of near there. So I split my time between Macclesfield and Wilmslow. I would say that's really where I'm from, and spent a lot of my time in my childhood and teenage years and stuff.
Did that change how you saw money? And this is a really bizarre off the cuff question, because purely when I was up there, I've never seen so many Lamborghinis, Ferraris, supercars in such a small area. Like, that area of the world is clearly very, very affluent. Did that have any sort of impact on you at all growing up?
Really, really good question. Because I think massively so. So my parents were never badly off. They, were okay. But they sent me to private school in Cheadle whilst I was there, but they struggled to send me there, sort of thing. But I think they just always knew that they kind of wanted to. So whenever I was at school, I was always like poor, I would say, in comparison to everybody else. So people would always, after Christmas, we'd come back and the kids would get iPads for Christmas or bought their first car and everything like that. And I always remember feeling a little bit like, not that I didn't fit in, because I got on with everyone very well, but there was just a different mentality, and it was a bit pretentious. And my family aren't like that at all. I mean, they're all from working class backgrounds. So it's just, I think that is where a lot of my drive to succeed sort of came from, because I thought, I don't want to feel like that anymore. But I think that's where I got a bit of a disconnect, because actually, is money success, or is what is your definition of success? But when I was surrounded by so many people that for them the epitome of success was being, having Lamborghinis and all the fancy things. But I don't know, I'm not against private school, but I do think it doesn't give you a realistic expectation of what the real world is like. Like, you are going to be socializing with people from all walks of life, and it's just, I don't know, it's something with it doesn't sit that well with me a little bit.
I think that's, you see this a lot with politicians, because obviously they all go to the highest of the highest private schools, and they are very, very book smart, but they're not people smart. And there's such a massive disconnect. And in business, you'll be a lot more successful if you're a people person. You can connect with people, but you don't actually necessarily have the academic background to back it up, if that makes sense. But I think you kind of had the best of both worlds there, because you had the reality of a quote unquote normal upbringing, where Lamborghinis and stuff weren't the normal in your household, but you then saw, this is actually possible. Because even for me nowadays, when I see I was in London the other day and I saw a weird two-tone pink McLaren and outside St. Pancras station, and I've never ever seen anything like it in my life. Sometimes at the gym here you get Ferraris or Lamborghinis outside, and it still blows my mind, because for me that's not normal, but for you it would have been normal. So for you to dream of that isn't too unrealistic, but for someone that's never seen that to be like, what the hell does a Ferrari even look like? What do they sound like? Do you know what I mean? So I think you kind of had the best of both worlds, where, as you said, the people you were there at school with, they were so up their own arse, living this fairy tale lifestyle, probably not happy. But then when they go into the real world, they get hit with this reality stick and they fail.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there is some truth in that. And I feel like one thing I always find quite unusual is, so one of the main things I think that has shaped me is my step parents, actually, that I've had through my parents breaking up. And I don't know if that's the dynamic that every step parent has with their stepchildren or whatever, but it is a weird dynamic. And I had some quite horrible step parents, to be honest with you. But I always thought the bad experiences I had through them weren't bad experiences. I thought they taught me about all the different types of people in the world. And I feel like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like each person has a purpose, or I don't want to say like a destiny, but I feel like a lot of your childhood or whatever you go through is actually more about building you up to be someone or something that can bring more positivity into the world. And I think it really shocks me when people have negative experiences in their life and then they then project that onto other people. I always feel like, why would you not take it on board and then find ways that you could then improve other people's life with it?
I think that's fascinating, because I think you're completely right there. So again, I've had numerous guests who've sort of had the same epiphany moment as you, where something's happened to them negatively in their childhood, and their instant response was, right, where's the positive in this? And we know, again, you know this now, and again, I know this is what I talk about. Like, it's then turning any negative into a positive. And something that I always say is, life happens for us, not to us. So it happens for a reason. But I think the biggest thing that what you sort of said there is the reason why I think most people do struggle is because they don't have the faith or confidence in themselves. So especially if that bad event has happened to them, and then it's knocked their self-confidence, not their self-doubt, and they don't have the faith in themselves to get out of that situation, they're just searching for validation. And the only way they know to get validation is the person that supposedly should love them was horrible. So if they're horrible, then it kind of gets them that validation, if that makes sense. That's my logical explanation of it. But you're completely right. But so even from that such a young early age, then you understood that all these things that were negatively impacting you, like, let's call them setbacks, because again, we're going to go into business. Let's call it like a setback. You always saw it as a lesson, even from your age.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think I was a very positive person when I was younger, though. I think I always took certain events as, I think I've learned this from it, but I don't think... One thing I'm definitely guilty of, and I was more guilty of when I was younger, is being quite nasty to myself and putting myself down. And I think that is like taking those external voices from people and internalizing them. But I think in adulthood and through meditation and through things like that, I've managed to find a way that actually, you can question that voice in your head, like, where has that come from? And yeah, so I think it definitely hasn't come naturally or easily to me to flip it all into a positive internally, but externally, I'd like to think I've never made anyone's life horrible because of my experiences. It was, for me, just the difficult part was not internalizing it all for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely get you. And I can't wait to dig into that a little bit later on. I want to get through the business side first, then I want to go into that. I wrote it down. No. I wrote it down in my notes, and I'm like, fucking hell, Jade, we've only just started here. Let's just calm it down a bit. Let's save the deep stuff. No, but honestly, I love it, and I can't wait to unpick that. But this is what I want to get into, because again, people will hear they've been on The Apprentice and all that sort of stuff, and it's like, yes, that's who you were, but I'm really, really interested in getting to who you are now. But I really just want to get this backstory in there so people can see who you kind of were, especially when it comes to the business burnout side of stuff. So let's just look quickly back onto the business side of stuff. As a woman in a predominantly male-dominated environment, which business is, whether that rightly or wrongly, I obviously argue that it's wrong. Did you feel some sort of pressure being a woman in such a male-dominated environment? And if so, how did you use that?
So my background's always been in media, so marketing, PR, that sort of stuff. And so unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, I've actually always been surrounded by quite a lot of women at work, which has always been great. But
amazing.
Yeah, it's always been amazing. But the only thing that I remember being quite shocked about when I first came into the working world was how there's the thing I found quite difficult being a woman in business is trying to straddle that line between being you want to be nice but not too nice, be stern but don't be a bitch. And it's almost as if I've definitely noticed over the years that there isn't that same box for a man. And yeah, so that's definitely been difficult. Like, I always remember going into work and just comments on what you're wearing all the time, things like that, from men and women, which I don't think now would happen. And I'd like to think that things have changed in the office working world and everything like that. But yeah, What sort
of comments would you get? Was it like inappropriate comments? Would it be saying that you shouldn't be wearing that? What kind of stuff would you be getting back then?
So I always remember, this was actually the women in the office when I first started, I was going off what everyone else wore to work, and playing dress up as you do when you first start out in the working world. And I remember getting pulled to a side once and then being like, Jade, like your skirt's too short. And I remember looking around and seeing so many other older women wearing exactly the same thing, but it was almost a bit of a judgment in it, like, oh, a young girl, don't come in showing too much skin or anything, but it's okay for other people. Just a bit of like a bitchy attitude, really.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the other things that I have found difficult is having, I mean, the job I'm in now, they wouldn't ever be like this at all, but in most of my jobs, if I've had a male boss, they've always ended up approaching me in inappropriate ways, which obviously I don't, well, I'm sure some men do go through it, but I feel like it's sometimes really hard to be friendly without, I think, your bosses then thinking that actually they might have a chance with you or something, which is a really bizarre thought, because I don't know, it's just a weird dynamic though. I think having a boss is a very weird dynamic as it is anyway, because I feel like people should just be free. I know that sounds a little bit hippie-ish, but it's something about having a boss doesn't sit quite well with me, and I don't know if that's because I've had quite negative experiences with male bosses in the past.
I would say potentially so. Listen to how you sort of spoke about that. Again, I don't necessarily like the term boss. So, for example, I've got coaches that work for me, and at no point would I like them to somehow think that I think I'm superior in any way, shape, or form. Like, we're all on a level. Like, I'm no better than them. I can still learn from them. Do you know what I mean? I just take care more of the business side of stuff, for example. I think the problem is, especially this one, I'm glad you sort of went down there, because that was kind of what I was getting at with my question. It's more sense of you get men on this sort of power trip that sort of think they're almost entitled to do and say and act however they want to people that work for them, if that makes sense. Like, it's almost, you see it on movies and stuff like that. And that's why, again, I've had no research on this happening to you, but I just wanted to throw the question in the pot just to be like, well, have you actually experienced any negativity when it comes to essentially that, like almost sexual harassment, inappropriate comments? So let's say that there's a female listener listening to this right now, and they're having that from their boss. What advice would you give them? What's the best way to approach that? So let's say they're working in this job. The boss is being a bit inappropriate. They're doing nothing to facilitate that. They're not being overly flirty. They're just being their nice, normal self. And their boss is being a bit inappropriate. From your experience and the stuff you're sort of doing now, what sort of advice would you give to someone in that situation that feels a little bit helpless?
I think it is a really, really difficult one, and I'm not sure I've completely nailed it or got it down personally myself. I know that when this has happened to me in the past, so the first one I can think of off the top of my head, going on a night out, and then, the boss was there, and then waking up the next morning, going into work, opening my emails and having an email off him saying, come and get into my bed. Bear in mind, like, totally, well, like, you can't get much more inappropriate than that. I just sort of laughed it off, well, I guess I did laugh it off, but I was 21, so it's like, I personally didn't know how to handle that. And then the second time, I had a boss who was messaging me all day, every day, and I think this is, this is the difficult part with it. I, in some ways, feel like I led that situation on in some ways because I was friendly back. Yeah. And then you start, I personally, and I know when I've spoken to other women about it, you sometimes start taking the blame yourself a little bit, thinking, well, actually, to be fair, it takes two to tango and all this sort of stuff. But then I always remember it then crossing a line, and I was like, this is not right. And all of a sudden he acted as if he'd not been acting a certain way towards me, and I never mentioned that to my manager. And my manager was a proper feminist and much older than me at the time and much wiser. And I ended up leaving that job because I couldn't face him, because he was just sexually advancing at me so much, and I was getting panic attacks all the time when I was going to work, because it was just horrible the way it all sort of panned out. And I never actually told my manager why I left, and it always makes me sad because I would never want her to think that it was because of her.
Yeah.
So, but if that was to happen now, older and wiser, I'd like to think, absolutely not. I wouldn't stand for it.
I think now things have changed as well. With
massively.
All the stuff that's gone on now, like especially that manager, the fact he's had it, your boss, in an email. I mean, fuck me.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't be any more fucking stupid if you tried. Do you know what I mean? Like, the paper trail on
literally. Oh my God. He would, yeah, it wouldn't happen now. It was literally just before the Me Too movement. It was just before that. And at that time, I'd sort of honestly, like, I look back now and I think, God, I was so young and I was so naive. I know you know what you're doing at 21, but I think when there's that position of power, it's a little bit of a weird dynamic that you're maybe not used to. And anyway,
well, yeah, but look at it though.
I wouldn't stand for it.
Even the actresses of the Harvey Weinstein or stuff that happened with that, like, I don't think it matters necessarily what company or organization that you're in. I think it's the whole thing of you as a female at that age, you're coming in, you're almost like fresh meat, you want to progress, you're hungry to try and actually prove yourself, and then you've got your boss that's sort of doing that to you, and you're a bit conflicted of like, well, what do I do? Because if I say no, then he can fire me, or he's not going to give me the promotion or the opportunities that I can to move it up. But then if I'm too flirty, he's going to think I'm trying to sleep. Do you know what I mean? It's such a horrible position that you're put in that you shouldn't necessarily have to ever be put in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And unless you are outright, I fancy my boss, I am 100% flirting with him, then obviously your boss will flirt back. But it should literally have to be a case of you say, I fucking like you, before he then starts to instigate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm really glad we went down this rabbit hole. Didn't know we were going to go there, and obviously none of the show notes, but I'm glad that we went down into that rabbit hole. Talk to me then about The Apprentice, because obviously this, for many people, is their golden ticket to like a promised land. And again, you did absolutely amazing. You got through the semi-finals, but you had a very different outcome to this being like the golden ticket promised land for you. So can you talk to me a little about what you realised on The Apprentice that sort of shifted everything for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we go on to this point on the last one, I would say for any women who are going through anything like that now, I would like to think that doesn't happen as much anymore. Like, don't feel bad for speaking out and don't feel stupid, because that was the problem at the time. I felt stupid. Like, it was my fault, which I do still believe that I do have a part to play in it. But I think just don't be scared to speak up, because I know now, being older, I wouldn't have stood for it. I would have told my manager, I would have taken it to HR, I would have done something about it. Yeah. And that is a big regret I have, that I haven't. Yeah, and if anyone ever wants to reach out to me or anything, I would help however I could. Yeah. So
no, that's amazing. No, honestly, stuff like that, that's absolutely amazing. So I'm really glad you did bring that up and you finished it on the point you wanted to. So no, I really do appreciate that. And obviously all the links to Jade's socials will be on the show notes at the bottom. So yeah, again, reach out if you need help.
Thank you. So, sorry, back onto The Apprentice now before I went on my tangent.
No, I love it.
So, yeah, The Apprentice. Wow. I mean, it was so amazing. I never, ever, ever, ever expected I'd get onto it. I actually applied for The Apprentice whilst I was going through that period at my work where I was getting the panic attacks and sort of thinking, what the hell am I going to do? I need to get out of this, but I can't find a way out. And I applied for The Apprentice and obviously didn't think that I would get on. And then I got through to one round, and then I got through to the next. And before I knew it, I was like, I'd moved to London. Nobody knew that I was going there for this thing. And it was just mental. It was so crazy. But yeah, it was a bit eye-opening because, again, I think because I was in such a dark place when I applied for The Apprentice, it was kind of, I had a goal. So all of a sudden had a goal. I had a way that I wanted to get out of it. So I lost loads of weight because I put loads of weight on at this point because I was just comfort eating. I'd started meditating. I started seeing a hypnotherapist. I became really spiritual. And yeah, I really surprised myself because I don't think I had much self-belief at that point. And getting as far as I did, it was amazing. But then sort of what goes up must come down.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can imagine with The Apprentice, like you're literally filmed 18 hours a day. You have microphones on you all the time. You're not allowed really to speak off camera. And it's just very psychologically testing. So when I sort of came out of that, I was like surrounded by people who had never really been surrounded by before, who were, you know, really successful entrepreneurs or you know, people high up that I thought I always wanted to be in these circles and be going to like front row fashion row. I remember getting invited to front row fashion, a front row fashion show. And that is all I probably ever would have wanted prior to it. And I got there and I thought, nobody seems any happier here. Like nobody seems any happier here. And there seems to be more judgment. You seem to have to want to impress people that you don't know. And I was like, oh no, like this is all I've ever wanted. And I've got here. I've wanted to, I guess, be known by people. I wanted to be successful, but actually it just kind of brought the worst out in other people around me, because it was, oh, who do you know? What do you do? And I thought, oh, this is horrible. What am I doing? And yeah, it's crazy, because then all of a sudden, what do you aim for? And I don't know about you, but I think you have to aim for something in life. Otherwise, you lose all sense of meaning and purpose. So that was when I sort of went and lived with monks in India and stuff like that to essentially figure out what would actually make me happy, because I had to change that frame of reference.
Do you think it was, you see this in a lot of people, like Tyson, I use Tyson Fury as an example all of the time, because if you look at his story, like there's videos of him when he was like 14 years old saying he's going to be world heavyweight champion of the world and blah, blah, blah. He then gets there, and then he then goes into crippling depression, gets morbidly obese, and just ruins his entire life when he hits that pinnacle of his entire life. So it's kind of the same thing here. But for me, I think it's more what people define success as. And I think there's such a warped view of success in society. I don't think striving for success is a problem. It's what people's definition of success is. And people think, as you've sort of alluded to there, it's front row of fashion shows, it's all the luxury cars, it's all the money. But actually, to be successful, you could just be actually have a loving partner. That's success. It could be to, I don't know, grow a plant that can then feed you, for example. That is success. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but people set these stupid success goals that aren't really their goals. It's not in line with their core values and what they want to be as a person. I think that's where the disconnect comes. They're not being congruent with who they actually are as a person. So then when they actually get there, like you sat there on that front row of the fashion show, you're like, this isn't actually who I am as a person. Like, yes, this is a goal, tick, but actually I'm looking around, I'm like, these people are fucking dickheads. Like, this is not me as a person. And then it lives that empty, that empty void. I can imagine it. The reason I'm saying it is I can imagine it. I literally can imagine it. So again, I used to be a model, so I know what that kind of industry is like.
Yeah.
It's just like, I know exactly the kind of people you're talking about. But it's like, you then just sat there as an empty shell. Because again, my story is I was most depressed when I was on the front cover of magazines. That is my story. So I was there being this person that people aspire to be, and I was depressed as fuck. So I kind of get that.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? I always remember this one, looking at a social media post and someone being like, oh, I wish I was like you. And I remember thinking at my lowest point, why do you want to be like me? I don't even want to be like me. And like, that is, I think that must happen with so many people through social media and stuff. It's quite crazy. And I actually remember the epiphany moment so vividly and being like, oh my God, I need to leave this country immediately. I need, like, what the hell is going on? And it was like, as it was the A-listers of Z-listers sort of party, if you know what I mean. So it was
like the Jedwoods.
Yeah. Well, it was more like the made in Chelsea's,
Oh,
the only way is I know, but like
hurting my soul.
the A-list, Z-list, and
Yeah.
I always remember and the Love Islands and stuff like that, and I always remember prior to the Apprentice, like I wanted to go on Love Island. I remember thinking like that's like the key to success. You if you get on there, you make your money, and then you live happily ever after.
Yeah.
So I remember when I got invited to this party to go and mingle with all these people, I thought, oh, that's quite cool. And I got there and everyone looked miserable. They were literally, it was like, there was like this weird hierarchy system where all the A-list, Z-listers were on like a higher podium than the others, and everyone was trying to get a picture with them. And all of the Love Island people, they would take like taking selfies and video and everything and looking really unhappy. And I remember thinking, oh, that must have been a bad party, because every time I see them on social media, they look like they're having such a good time. Maybe I've come to a bad event or something. And then I looked on my socials the next day at all these people that have been there, and they looked like they were having the best time of their life. And I just remember thinking, I feel like I'm in the Matrix. I feel like we're living in a perception, like I'm looking at, or someone else at home is looking into their phone the next day thinking, I wish I was at that party, it looks so good. But in reality, the people that were there, they were miserable and they didn't want to be there. Yeah.
Fucking Jade, you've given me goosebumps talking about that shit. Yeah. Mikey's sat behind saying the same thing. Like, there's so many people that need to hear what you've just said. Like, I talk about this all the time. The cancer, if you were, of modern society is your Love Islands. Because it is so fake, and it's the epitome of making people not feel good enough to like, the maximum. Like, you have to do all these. It's like the Tinder culture personified. The fact of you got two people that you're trying to get together. The whole thing of Love Island, the whole premise that you can find love on an island, is bizarre. And the fact of you've got a certain amount of time to talk to someone, and then you're then going to leave that person to go and speak to somebody else, and it's just. That's not how love is, and that's not what love is, and that's not how relationships should be. You need to actually allow time for it to grow, just you two. And I think it's just so fucked up. I cannot stand Love Island in any way, shape, or form. So I'm so glad that you went there with that. Brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant.
I think the thing is, though, you can understand why. And again, like I said, I don't want it to be like, oh, these people who believe in this are stupid. Because I was there, like, as well. Going on a reality show was the ultimate success, because all of a sudden you get all these things, but actually I don't think it's not what the yearning is for inside. Like, it's connection and being around people, and it's so mad. I think this is why people have midlife crisis. I can never say that word. Crises, or however we're going to say it. But I think that is why they have them, because I think we're taught in society to jump on the rat race, work. And then I think people get to 50 years old and they're like, hold on, I've got the car, I've got the wife, I've got the kids, I've got everything that I always set out to have, but I don't feel any different than when I just was 23, earning half the amount with less responsibilities and, enjoying life or something like that. And I think that's the thing with reality shows. I think they kind of skip out that step in between, because you don't have to. It sounds as cliche as it is. I think it is the journey of achieving things that is where the satisfaction lies. And I think with reality television, you don't earn it. Like, no. You don't earn it. You're just literally on a TV screen, and then the next day people care a little bit more about you, or don't care. You know what I mean? They've got an opinion of you.
And again, and all they're seeing is what the producers want them to see. So if you're a lovely person and you say one fucked up stupid comment, that's what will get shown. You're then an arsehole. The world then hates you, but they're not seeing. And again, people don't realize. And again, I'm not sure what it's like on The Apprentice, but you can see it with Love Island. The way that things are manipulated, situations are manipulated to get an outcome, and people think it's reality. It is not reality. It is manipulated to get an outcome so that certain people will come across in a certain way, in a certain light, so that you will feel a certain way about them. It's so fucked up and bizarre, yet people think it's real. Up. Yeah. And I want to just sort of hit on a point you said there. You said that people have a midlife crisis at 50. I'm going to challenge that. And I'm going to say that people are now having that at 25 years old, because they're 25 years old. And they're, like you said, the whole thing is you get to 50 and basically you've spent the time developing and building it. The problem is now people are 25. If they're not millionaires, if they don't own their own house, and if they're not driving Ferraris, they're a loser, they're a failure, they're fucked up at life. What's the point? That's what people are now getting at the age of 25. So let alone, forget a midlife crisis at 50. People are having this crisis at 25, thinking that they're a failure, that they haven't figured out exactly what they want, and they haven't made a success of themselves at 25. I think it's absolutely bizarre, and it's crippling people, which is why I think now the rates of depression are so chronic in the people below 30 years old, because there's this thing of, you've got to be successful, you've got to be a millionaire, you've got to have your life together, you've got to have kids, you've got to have a dog, you've got to have a 5-bedroom house, you've got to have all these things by the time you're 22, or you're a fucking loser. And it blows my mind.
It is. Well, it's the machine, isn't it? I said this to my partner on holiday. I said, oh, I haven't recorded anything that I've done for the last 2 or 3 days. I said, but to be honest with you, I said, I don't want to share it with anybody. I just want to be in the moment and do what I'm doing. I said, but then if you don't record it, it doesn't happen. And he was like, that's how they've got you. It's like the new religion. Like back in the day, it used to be, oh, you won't get to heaven if you don't act in a certain way. And now it's almost as if social media has become this new religion where if you don't conform to these ideologies, you're out the gang, you're out of the new heaven that exists. But in reality, like, I'm not here to dispute whether heaven exists or heaven doesn't, but like this heaven that we're seeing on social media, that doesn't exist. It's not real, it's not reality. But then even I find this, and I don't know if you find this, but like I don't want to play ball, but sometimes I think, but if I don't play ball, then actually, you know, how do you market yourself? Would you be able to do things like we're doing now? And it's like, they've got you. It's like, I don't want to be got.
I completely hear your argument with that. And this is something I've had, as you said, a massive dilemma with this. So when I'm away, I will be away. I won't post about it. When I'm in a relationship, for the early part of it, most of it really, I don't post about it because it's no one's fucking business. So I very much now keep my Instagram page for business. It is for business. Now I understand that people say, oh yeah, but people, you got to show you express yourself. Just read my fucking captions, watch the podcast, because you'll see the real me on this podcast. This is how I am as a person. Like, I don't put something on, this is me. But for me, it's like, I very much now, my social media, I use it. It doesn't use me. Now, don't get me wrong. For example, earlier on today, bizarrely, we were talking about this. I was literally doing some work. I got stressed for a second and I went to reach for my phone. And the first thing I went to go to was Instagram. Again, to try. And I thought, whoa, I was like, put your fucking phone down and crack on what you were doing. But it's literally, I just wanted that little hit of something. And I thought, oh, you motherfucker. So then I put it back down and I carried on working again. So I'm now trying to, again, I've got someone that looks after my social medias for me. So they basically do the back end stuff. So I don't have to be on it all the time. Only if I'm needed, I'll come in and talk, if that makes sense. So I can separate myself from it. But I think it's a massive thing there that, as you said, it's that disconnect of, if you're not there, you're not relevant. If you're not relevant, blah, blah, blah. But you're trying to make money and run a business, and it's a fucking minefield.
It is a minefield. And the thing is, I always remember when I was away recording Fine and Feel Good, one of the girls that I was speaking to, she was like, oh, I get so much gratification from people liking my posts and blah, blah, blah. And I genuinely don't get that. And I'm so glad. Like, as in, I'm glad, but then it also stops driving me to go on social media. But like, even yesterday, I've had to be on my social media more because of the launch of the podcast and do some marketing and stuff. But it feels so cringy. I just can't deal with it. I cringe, and then I'm thinking about captions. Like the other day, I think I was actually thinking about a caption for hours in the back of my head. And I haven't done that for such a long time because I'm just not bothered by it. But I'm thinking, right, I need to make sure, like, I want people to listen to the podcast because I think it's got some amazing things in there that could really help people. But to do that, I have to play ball with the social media stuff. And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to. And it can be like a little worm going in your head, I think. And I think it is sad. I mean, when I'm with my friends a lot of the time, I mean, I think they think I'm an absolute technophobe grandma sometimes, because they'll all be sat there talking about, oh, did you see blah blah did this, and I'm like, oh, who are these people that you know? And they're like, oh no, we don't know them, it's an influencer. And I'm like, oh my god, why are we doing this?
And it's the thing, and again, people think I'm the weirdo. People think you're the weirdo. It's like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? Like, no,
Oh.
no, we're not the weirdos.
It's the Matrix.
Oh,
We're living in the Matrix.
Do not start me on this. Jade English, do not make me go down a conspiracy rabbit hole. I've already said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add you to the list of guests I'm going to have back. I'm just going to have a round table of conspiracies because it goes down this rabbit hole. Most podcasts, like a guest will say something, I'm like, please don't get me started on this subject because I won't shut up. Jade, I just want to loop back, if I may, to your lowest point. So obviously you said after all that happened with the TV and all that sort of stuff, and you briefly touched on your lowest point. Can you, before we go into where you're at now with the Finding Feel Good podcast and living with the monks and essentially doing all that deep stuff, can we just talk about your lowest point? Because again, I've not seen anything about this. I'm not sure how open you are to talking about this. So please feel free to share as much as you feel comfortable with. But what did your lowest point look like for you?
So there's been a few different periods. I think I don't want to say healing, but I think the journey of life, I think is up and down, isn't it? I always see this post on Jay Shetty where if you're alive, the thing is going, what do they call it? You know, if you were in a hospital and it was like beep, beep.
Oh,
beep.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Where if you die,
we'll get Mikey to put the thing.
There you go.
Yeah, so you can see it.
If you're dead, it flatlines, doesn't it? And I think if you're not living, it's all one way. And if you are living, it's going up and down. And so I think my very, very first, I would say, breakthrough, which was really a breakdown, was that point where I told you the boss situation, I applied for the Apprentice. I was having those panic attacks all the time. And that was like my first wake-up call, sort of started meditating, realised that actually I needed to sort my shit out. And I actually realised that I was in control of my own life. Mm-hmm. But then I thought I was on and up, and I wouldn't come back down again. And then after The Apprentice, that was when I crashed. And I mean, it's really not ethical what they do on these shows. Like, in fact, if it was in the real world, it would be illegal, I think, the way that they treat you and psychologically do things.
In what way?
So they wouldn't feed you for like
what?
A whole day.
What?
To get you really antsy. So by the end of filming, you'd be absolutely starving. You'd get 4 hours of sleep on a good night, and then they'd bang in the rooms at like 4 a.m. with cameras. They'd turn off all the hot water to the showers.
Oh, so just fucking hell, yeah.
Yeah, and like also just try and make scenarios that would lead you down a rabbit hole that you could not turn left or right, and basically threatening that if you did not play ball, they could edit it to look good for them. And
so you
actually
got threatened with that, because again, this is bizarre. I knew this is what the shows were like, but to actually have them outright say, "We will do this if you don't play ball," that's a different fucking thing, isn't it?
They're not stupid. They don't say it outright like that. It's like, you're more than welcome to leave, but it won't look very good on the show.
Okay,
and the thing is, with these production companies, there tends to be like a head, and then all the minions around doing their little jobs. So it's always come from someone above. And I think there's been studies that, you know, if you're told by someone in a more senior position than you to do something, you're more scared of them than the consequences of actually doing what they tell you to do.
Yep.
So I think they just, you know, and there's so many people on these production things. I genuinely don't think individuals are bad people. I just think they do what they're told. I think they switch over shifts at night, so they think that maybe the other shift is doing what the other shouldn't be. And it's very psychologically damaging. And then after that, the thing is, you've had no phones, you've had no social media, you've had no contact with the outside world except for a 10-minute phone call once a week, where actually a production member stays in the room with you anyway, so you literally don't have any privacy. And then you get dropped out back into the world again, and you have like Stockholm Syndrome. You feel like you've escaped prison. I always remember the first honestly, it's so weird. I remember going to the shop and like being like really paranoid that people were listening to me, because I'd obviously been mic'd up the whole time for 2 months. And then you go away and no one knows what's happened to you, like where you've been and what you've been doing. And then it gets edited for 6 months. So for 6 months, you're remunerating on what's been said, how they're going to edit it, what they're going to do. And then finally it comes out at the end of the year. So it literally takes out a whole chunk of your year. And then it plays out. And then all of a sudden I use the word famous very loosely. I know you're not like some megastar coming off The Apprentice, but all of a sudden people know you.
Yeah,
and that is actually, again, like I said, if you asked me when I was younger, I probably would have said, yeah, I would quite like the idea of being famous. But it was, for me personally, I really didn't like it. I found like people would come up to me that I didn't know, which is fine. But then like suddenly you feel a bit weird about going outside and looking like a bit of a scruff, or I felt like I just couldn't be myself because I didn't want people to then say something bad about me and then pass it on. And then journalists
or end up in Heat magazine and your flip flops or like your slippers or
exactly. And like the journalists started turning up at my door, at my mum's house, my dad's door, and stuff like that. And so that was just really quite stressful. So that was when I was like, I'm gonna go and live with monks in India because I just need to escape this bullshit.
So that's what it was. It literally was a case of, I need to get the fuck out of here. Where can I go? Right, monks.
It was, I can't even explain it to you. It's so bizarre. It's
because I had this, by the way, just before COVID, I literally had it all planned out to go and live with monks. And then COVID hit and I couldn't go do it. So yeah, that's why I'm really interested in going into this. So you're about to ask me a question. Am I religious?
Are you religious?
No, I'm spiritual. So I believe in spirituality. So I believe in the concepts of religion and what they try and teach you. But I believe in the universe. I don't believe in one religion, one God.
Okay, so likewise, that's what I believe as well. I think what you put out, you get back. I do believe in karma and blah, blah, blah. But at this point where I was so low, I became spiritual at this point, but I wouldn't have said I believed in it. But I had something within me. I don't know where it came from. It felt like it was I don't want to say like a godlike thing speaking to me, because I know that I don't want to ever sound woo-woo, because I know if someone had said that to me prior to me having these thoughts and feelings, I would have thought crazy. But I just had this thing within me that was like, you need to go and live with monks in India. Like that is how you overcome this. That is your purpose. You will figure out what you need to do once you get there. And it wasn't like, I don't feel like I had any say in that. And then I went on LinkedIn one day, and weirdly, Jay Shetty, don't know if you've heard of him.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so he popped up. I don't even know how that happened. And before I knew it, I was on a phone call with him. And this was before he was big at this point, but he wasn't big like he is now. And we had a phone conversation. And he was like, oh yeah, I live with monks. You could go and do it too. You can do it in this place. And so that's what I ended up doing. And so I went and lived with monks, and I, on the way around, went to Bali. And Bali's like such a healing place because everyone's quite nice, and it's just, I don't know what it is, it's got something about the place that's just magical. And I'd love to say to you at that point, I came back from, this was not this time that I went to Bali to record the podcast, this was a few years ago, and I'd love to say that I came back and I was like, I'm fixed after I've been with the monks and blah, 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 being in Bali. But actually, I think I then went worse when I came back for a bit because I couldn't integrate back into society very well.
It literally is like, we talk about the Matrix. Once you start to understand things, you see the world in a different place. And I think, again, I think Mikey, my videographer, again, we've very much been on the same sort of journey. I think a lot of people who've been on a spiritual journey have that same thing where you basically have the lid taken off society. You understand some shit, you then go back into society and you're like, what the fuck? People need to know this information. Me and Mikey literally did a podcast on this about how to deal with this, because you just want to go and tell everyone, oh my God, be careful. You're ruining your life. This is happening.
It's just gone out.
A few minutes later.
Oh, sorry, I was really interested in what you were saying then, and it cut out. But
what part did you get to?
So I heard you say that you and the videographer both said, like, once you come back into society and you sort of dip your toe in spirituality, you realize what is going on in the world. And I think that is, like, tell me about, what was your experience with that? Sorry, I feel like we've just spoken about me all the time. Let's talk about you.
No, that's why you're on the podcast for. So then Mikey will get it all fixed out. But essentially what we were saying was in that podcast was we spoke about how you go on a spiritual journey and you basically want to try and help everybody. So it's like you try and force your beliefs, opinions on people. And what you actually end up doing is you end up causing more distance and more gap. It's like when you get the extreme vegans and vegetarians or religious people, they try and force you to do something, it really pushes you back up and it has the exact opposite effect. So basically we were just talking about that, how what you really want to be doing with that is just try and be a little bit more gentle. So you're more suggestive rather than forceful and telling. But I think, again, you went to the more extreme versions than me and Mikey. So me and Mikey had this thing through drugs. I had it through my meditation sort of stuff, and you've then gone to the monks in Bali. But then once you actually then come back to quote unquote the real world, you see it completely differently. It is literally like you live in the Matrix. So people are listening to this, and whenever I keep using the reference to the Matrix, the reason why I use that is because once you see what's going on, it literally is like you're living in a different world, and it's bizarre. So I completely get what you said there. I think Mikey gets it as well. And I think most people who've been on this spiritual journey will also get it as well. But can I just ask them, when living with the monks, what were some take homes you took from that? Because that's a pretty bizarre thing. Like, I mean, living with monks is just sounds amazing to me. But what did you actually learn from your time there?
Well, the weird thing that I actually discovered was, it didn't matter. So I was there living in the Himalayan mountains with this group of monks and some people that I'd met on the group as well. And I had no hot water. I was living on like a little mattress, and I was just in nature. I was just going about my everyday life there. And it just made me realize that is literally all you need to live. I didn't feel any different living in that setting than when I had been back home, living in a nice house with a nice car or something like that. I realised what is going on internally is so much more important than what is going on externally. If you don't like yourself, it doesn't matter if you don't like yourself driving a Ferrari. You're better off liking yourself, enjoying your everyday life, riding a bike than, it was just... And I just started to see, again, I don't know if this was me. In some ways, I feel like I was going a little bit crazy at the time, but I think that is sometimes how you can feel when you start going on that spiritual journey, because I felt a bit mad. And I just remember looking at people, and thinking, wow, you're all beautiful. Like, you're all so unique and have your own gifts, and we're like full of love, but things had been distorted along the way, and it almost felt like
you could see their pain. You could see that. Can you see that? For me, I saw their pain. This is bizarre. I looked at them and I'm like, I can feel how trapped and unhappy and miserable you are. As you said, it's like I can feel you. I can feel you are an amazing human being, but I can feel that you are not okay. And you just look around and you just sense that people just aren't living a happy life.
No, I've got goosebumps. But it's you must be an empath then. Have you heard of that before? An empath? Yeah, massively. And like, I honestly think everyone is born with different gifts, whether that's being an empath, so that's like feeling people's, I don't even want to say energy, because I think it's much, you could put it in scientific terms if you really wanted to, of being empathetic, and you can tell you're emotionally intelligent. I think that's how they describe it.
But even then, even for this, like, my audience is quite clued up with this. Like, I fully believe, and again, it's scientifically backed now. So we're talking about science. Let's call it what it is. We are vibrational beings. We are vibrational people. We are energy. I don't give a fuck what you think. We are energy. It's fact. Go and look it up. So we are energy. So you are either vibrating a positive or a negative frequency. You cannot be in a neutral frequency. So when you're picking up people's energy, you are literally, when you say, I get a bad vibe off them, what is a vibe? A vibe is a vibration. Vibration is energy. You are literally picking up that person's energy. So you can feel people's energy. So when you actually say, I'm not getting a good vibe off that person, you are literally saying to yourself, I am not getting a good energy frequency off that person. Like, and that's what it is. So people don't believe this stuff. Like, it is factually true. Go and look up Joe Dispenza, look into that stuff. That's my audience, Jade, not you. It's like I was ranting at you. I wasn't.
No, but it's true. It's so weird, isn't it? That you. I was thinking earlier. You know the term hippie.
Yep.
There isn't hippie's got a bit of a derogatory term, hasn't it? Really, it's not often seen as a positive. There's not a juxtaposed. Sorry, I think I've got that word wrong. Please edit that out.
No, that's right. That's right.
But there isn't an opposite word for someone who doesn't believe in any of that stuff in a negative way. I don't think, unless you can think of one.
No, you got like an atheist, but that's religious rather than spiritual. So no, it's almost like a spiritual atheist essentially, but it's not. Yeah.
But even with like a hippie, I don't necessarily think of hippies as people who are religious, but people who just believe in the earth and believe in nature, which, I mean, nature exists, like we know it exists. It's not like a made up concept. We can tell that but there isn't like people who are in suits and on this rat race thing. There's not a negative connotation word that you would give them that's the same as hippie. And I thought, isn't that weird? Because it obviously shows that the media want to push the message that being in touch with nature and being in flow with energy and that sort of stuff is a bad thing. But actually, if you are working in this corporate being, then you are doing well. You are the epitome of success. And it's just, who's it benefiting, really?
So, Jade, I was nipping it again and again. My audience can think I fucking seem to hate them. Right. How many guests do I have to have on that keep saying the same thing? Jade has literally been on the TV. One of the biggest things that's on the BBC, The Apprentice. I fucking love that show. And she's literally told you how the system works. We've had numerous guests that said the same stuff. You need to understand that the world is set up for you to fail. The world is set up for you to be miserable. The world is set up for you to be in a machine where you make those people money. You rely on them to live. You rely on them to work. You rely on them to have all these things. And you are fucking miserable because you're playing into their hands. And I don't care if that offends you. If that offends you and you're butthurt by that statement, it's probably because I've just told you some truths. You have to look at the bigger picture of what's going on here. And there's people like your Jades out there, like myself, like my other guests. We're trying to help you. We're trying to help you because we've been through that. And we're trying to make the world a better place, because you look at what's going on right now. The world's a fucking shit show. And the world is a shit show because the fucking media and what they're trying to get you to live in this state of complete and utter fear. Like, sorry, Jade. Sorry, I'm breathe.
No, but it's true.
Breathe,
it's
Daniel.
So true. Well, my back. This is another part of it. So, it says my connection's unstable. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can still hear you.
Okay, good. This is another part of it. So my background is actually journalism. So I have a degree in journalism. That I know. That's what I trained to do. No, I know. But that's what was so eye-opening as well. Like, I always wanted to be a journalist. And then all of a sudden, when I had this epiphany, I realised how much the media is actually the ones feeding all this negativity. And it, honestly, and I used to read the news all the time. I used to be really into it.
Yep.
Now, I don't listen to the news. I don't watch the news. People will say to me, "Oh, can you believe this is happening?" And I'm like, no, actually, I don't know, because I don't need to wake up every morning and feel like the world is awful and have fear literally pumped down my throat. But it's really sad, really, because I hope people, listening will also realize how much this shows I was into it. Like, I wanted to be a journalist so badly, and now I can't even read the news. Now I've realized how much of a lie it all is, and why it's just crazy. God, we've opened a lid.
No, we have. And Jade, I think, again, because obviously all the stuff we had at the start, where obviously the internet didn't quite work, we're definitely going to have you back on to go down some of these rabbit holes, I think, because like I said, we didn't quite scratch. I got more at this episode than I ever imagined possible. But there's another layer that we could go to. And I think that I'd love to have you and potentially another guest on back at the same time to actually talk about some of this stuff. I think that'd be absolutely epic. But to wrap this up, because I'm very, very cautious of your time, one question I ask all of my guests is, what advice would you give someone who feels stuck and out of control of their life right now?
So the first thing I always think with this sort of stuff, you should always say the first thing that comes up. And a vision board. Vision boards have always massively, massively helped me because I think they give you a direction to go in. And I think a direction is way more important than anything else, because otherwise you have no purpose and you don't know why you're being. So vision boards I just find amazing, but also like getting down to why you want certain things. Like, so, you know, if it is a car that's on your vision board, it's not, I want a car because other people will think I'm amazing, because I'm telling you now, if you're doing it for other people, like, it won't feel good. It's not the answer. But if it's, I want to get a car because I want freedom and to be able to travel the world and make these memories, or something that is genuinely going to fill your cup up inside, not from external validation, then it's a goer. So I would say vision boards and yeah.
No, I love that.
Finding out the why behind that.
The purpose is, the purpose for me, when I was at my lowest point, I realized once I did my own little journeys that I had no purpose and direction. So I literally, as soon as you started talking there, you said vision board, I then wrote my notes, purpose and direction. And then that's exactly where you went with it. So again, for people, I don't know if you can see my screen. Oh, I've got text messages, I can't do it. But on the back of my phone, I have my vision board. Again, on my big whiteboard next to me, I've got it at home in my mirror. I've got it wrote out. I've got it at the bottom of my bed, wrote out. I've got an audio recording of me talking to myself from the future of what my life's going to look like. So it's one of the things where I fully believe that you have to tell the universe where you want to go, and you have to believe that you've already got it. Again, we'll go into a deep podcast into that at some point about actually how to manifest things. But Jade, honestly, this has been unreal. I genuinely mean that. Like I said, Mikey and Chrissy behind me have been nodding along this whole time. Where can people find out more? Where can people find out more information about you? When I next get you on, I'll definitely talk more about the podcast, because I know you've got a podcast coming out, which is Finding Feel Good. So again, the links to that will be in the show notes. But where else can people find out about you?
So my Instagram, I know we were talking about Instagram, so don't feel like you have to follow me, guys. But if you do want to, it's Jade English, ITS, Jade English. And the podcast is called Finding Feel Good. And that's all about alternative therapies and trying to find a way to make you feel good naturally. And whether they work or not, there's some really weird shit on there. I'm not gonna lie. I do like a tantric. There's weird shit on it. I do a tantric sex class with my partner. I do a breathwork session, the Wim Hof method. It's mental. It's so good.
So what do you think of the breathwork stuff? Because we had a guy called Craig Seaton on that specialised in that, and we did a whole little breathwork meditation on the podcast, and I thought it was brilliant. What was your take on it?
So. Actually, I'm going to keep going for another 15 minutes if I can. I'm sorry, but literally, so the breath work, I had the least expectations for that episode. I thought, breathing, come on, how difficult can that be? I've been doing it every day for the last however many years, and I don't think I'll get much out of it. And oh my God, I think the breath work was actually my favourite.
It's nuts, isn't it? It's nuts, isn't it? When you do it properly and someone teaches you how to do it. Because I've meditated for years, but I've never done breath work. Once you do breath work, I did it for 2 hours once with Craig. I went to one of his workshops. Fucking hell.
What did you experience? Because it's some of the stuff I experienced. I'm like, no, surely that didn't happen. Maybe I was hallucinating. But what happened for you when you did it? So
one of my clients, the episode I did with Craig, that literally did a 10-minute. And in that 10 minutes, one of my clients had an out-of-body experience. That was just 10 minutes. So I was doing it for 2 hours. And literally, it was like it was 5 minutes. And I was like I was on a different planet. It literally was like I was in a completely different planet. And again, looking into this, oh, fuck me, you've opened up a can of worms here. But the conscious and the subconscious mind, and then the subconscious mind and the alternate space, whatever you want to call it, the universe, and what actually happens when you go into a sleep-like state and your subconscious takes over, about how potentially you do go into alternative realms and universes. I genuinely felt like I was on another planet, like I wasn't here. It was absolutely fucking bizarre.
Honestly, so I'll give you a teeny tiny little snippet of it, and this I don't know if I should say this because it's kind of a bit of a big thing in the episode. I'll say it anyway. I won't go into it, but I end up back in my mother's womb during the breathwork session.
What?
And I can feel all the emotions that she was going through while she was pregnant with me.
Fucking hell! I literally. I've gone full body goosebumps.
Honestly, it was. But then I know saying that, I'm like, I sound mad saying that, but I'm telling you, that's what happened. I could feel my mum's. You know how I said earlier that my mum and dad broke up when I was younger and stuff. My dad cheated on my mum while she was pregnant with me, and I felt all the pain and emotion and revisited that whilst I was in her womb. And when I came out of it, I was just so... I felt like I'd let go of it a little bit. And I really do think just that one session has changed how the way I store my own energy or negative energy within my stomach is. Honestly, we could go on about this all day. Just listen to it. It's mental.
Listen, if you need a reason to go and check out that podcast, you've got it right there. I literally, honestly, the entire time you were talking about, my whole body just broke out goosebumps the whole time. Fucking hell. Jade, honestly, to say that this has been a pleasure is an understatement. This has genuinely been fantastic. And even with the funny stuff we had at the start, like I said, I genuinely think that sort of set our tone for this whole episode. And again, for any of the people listening to this, I literally have not been able to see Jade the entire time because the way that we're recording this, that the internet's so bad, we're literally just staring at a blank screen. So this whole energy has been done without us seeing each other, which just shows you what an amazing person you are, Jade. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you. It's been so lovely. You're an absolute legend.
no, I really do appreciate it, Jade. Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you so much. Bye.